Welcome to the Workology Podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader. Join host Jessica Miller-Merrill, founder of Workology.com, as she sits down and gets to the bottom of trends, tools, and case studies for the business leader, HR, and recruiting professional who is tired of the status quo. Now here's Jessica with this episode of Workology.
I think that we can all agree that we could use a little bit more creativity in our lives. A recent LinkedIn workplace study found that creativity is the single most important soft skill that business leaders want from their employees. The question for business leaders in HR is, how do we foster, grow, and encourage creativity in the workplace? That's what we will be talking about today. A special thank you to my podcast sponsor, Clear Company. Today I'm joined by Christiane Michaelis. She's the founder of The Dirty Easel. Her business is focused on developing a creative culture. Christiane, welcome to the Workology Podcast.
Hello, Jessica. Thank you for inviting me.
Talk to us a little bit about your background.
So my background basically starts off with me being totally passionate about music. So I was a double bass player, and as a kid I played in a lot of different orchestras. I also played piano, and so I decided I want to start my career with this, and I went to music school and got a degree in music and also in German language and literature. And if you haven't detected my accent yet, I'm from Germany, so my background also starts and for a long time extends in Germany. Then after I got my degree in college, I pivoted a bit and went into the world of theater. And I became an opera director and a theater director and did plays and operas, mostly in Germany, but also in other European countries for about, 10 years. And after this time, I decided it's time for me to settle a little bit, to get a little bit more grounded. And I shifted from being a creative myself to fostering creativity in others, and became a teacher and taught theater arts and music and choir and also German language for kids from basically middle school through high school. And I did that also for almost 10 years, first in Germany, and then I moved to Austin here and continued teaching here. And then I decided to pivot again and combine all those previous experiences and bring them in together and synthesize them. And that's why I created or founded my own business, The Dirty Easel. And the mission of The Dirty Easel is to ignite creativity in individuals, but also in organizations and in the corporate world as a driver for innovation. And I help people to learn to think more outside of the box and use their creative thinking skills.
I love it. And let's talk about creativity. When people think of creativity, I think we immediately think of artists, poets, and writers. Those people are the creative people. But I wanted to ask you, what does creativity look like, and what is its role in your mind for the workplace?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So that's a common misunderstanding that creativity is only something that artists have. So typically, creativity is defined as coming up with something that's unique and new, but also something that has a value and provides a meaning. For example, if I just imagine things, that is not entirely creative because I don't really put that into action. So the creativity also has the aspect in it to do something with it that has a purpose and a value. And you can be creative in science, and humanity has been very creative in coming up with new ideas of how to develop themselves, how to make their lives easier, and how to invent things that move us as a species forward. So creativity really has a very huge range, and often we distinguish by what is called the big creativity and the little creativity. So the big creativity is the big inventions, like Einstein's theory of relativity. That's definitely a big C. Or Mozart's symphonies, big C. But the little c is the other small things that we do daily and very often also without noticing them. Like I look in the fridge at night and I see, oh my gosh, we only have three noodles left, and so how am I going to do dinner? So I need to get creative and come up with ideas how to solve those small problems. So everybody does creative things all day long. We just are not aware of this. You asked about creativity in the workplace, and that's interesting because that is really something that has changed a lot in the last 10 to 15 years. Like if I think back of the time where my parents, for example, started their careers, creativity was not even a work skill. It was like, yeah, it was something nice to have. Or maybe if you are an artist, or if you work at an ad agency, or if you're in marketing, yes, then you need creativity. But it's not something that was seen as important and relevant for everyone. And that really has shifted in the last 10 to 15 years. And now there's study after study that proves that creativity is a work skill that is very, very high in demand. LinkedIn came out with a study just like in the last weeks and said creativity is actually the most in-demand work skill of all the soft skills, and highly requested across all professions. And there are a lot of other questionnaires that come to the same solution. And people believe that when they're creative, they are actually better at their work. They are better as parents. They are better in organizing and managing their own life. So there's a lot of emphasis these days on the power of creativity to drive us forward.
Well, I definitely want to make sure that we reference the LinkedIn study, so I will include that in the transcript of this podcast because that sounds awesome and, certainly supports the topic we're talking about today.
Yeah. And if you want to have a bunch of studies, like IBM did a study in which they asked CEOs what is the leadership quality that they need the most, like what is the most important trait? And again, the answer was creativity is what is most important. So it's not management skills or any other skills. It really is creativity.
We kind of answered my next question, which is why is creativity important for the business? You're saying that CEOs are saying this is one of the most important skills. I definitely think that as an entrepreneur, creativity is definitely important because I look for myself as what value can I bring in the ecosystem that I serve and engage with that's different than others. And so I think that that's where creativity comes in. What are you seeing in your consulting with businesses?
So entrepreneurs, yes, always had to be creative. So there's not been a huge shift in the recent years. But there are two drivers for creativity that I think are really relevant and have a huge impact. So one is that the pace of innovation has changed exponentially in the last 10, 20 years. So in our lifespan, like I'm now 50 years old, I've started my life without internet, without cell phones, and I have personally witnessed a lot of this huge transformation that really changes the way we live our lives, not just our work lives, but also our private lives, how we make connections, how we find friends, how we are together with our friends, how we get together. So the pace of innovation is like picking up pace, and I think that's also what drives a lot of anxiety for people who say, oh, everything is going too fast, I can't really keep up with this. Like one example is like the smartphones. They are now a little bit older than 10 years, and it's amazing how they transformed every aspect of our life. And last year I was at South by, and I learned that we are already seeing the decline of this era. So the experts are saying, yeah, smartphones, they are already on the downhill path there, where we won't need them anymore, and where we have something else to replace them and to transform us in a different direction. So a lot of change is happening in all areas, all domains, and that's, I think, to stay up to date and to be on our feet to react to this change on the market as business people, we need to think innovatively. So there's a saying, disrupt or be disrupted. And there are all these industries that have changed so much, like Uber is just one example, or Airbnb, that has really changed the market in a very short amount of time. So people can't just do the business as they used to anymore. They have to find new ways to do that. And that's why we need creativity. The other aspect is that, and I think you had a podcast recently about this topic, about automation and AI transforming the workplace in a very impactful way in the very near future. So our workforce is going to change completely. And the prediction is that within the next 5 to 10 years, almost 50% of the jobs that exist today in the US won't exist in this form anymore. And again, creativity is our human competitive advantage compared to artificial intelligent machines. And creativity at this point is something that machines are not good at yet. Like they can adapt human creativity or can modify what has been invented before, but they are not good at coming up with something completely new and different. And I think that's where we as humans have to play our strength and find our place. And that's what makes creativity so important in every domain of work for the future.
You have a great TEDx talk that just came out that talks about AI and automation and how creativity plays a part in that. So I'm going to make sure to embed that also in the transcript of the podcast so people can check it out. Let's kind of go back a step and say, okay, you sold us, we are interested in creativity, but how do we focus on bringing this into the workplace? What do we need to do to be able to be more creative at work?
So there are many options to choose from. First, you have to understand the impact that creativity really has on your business. And then you also understand how much time and resources you're willing to contribute to change the creativity level. One big problem that we encounter in the workplace is that many people just believe that they are not creative. And there is this myth that you're either born as a creative person or you're not. And that's something where also the workforce has to change in the sense that they have to educate and train employees and show them that this is a myth and explain to them how creativity works. Like many people have no understanding that creativity has also rules and is based on a process and is absolutely a learnable skill. So I think there's a great room for doing this kind of training, starting first with awareness, understanding the need for creativity, understanding how creativity can be implemented. Then in the third step, I think it's really important to provide experiences in the workplace of creativity, because only if you experience it for yourself, you are able to change your belief system. If you grew up always believing I'm not creative, I'm not good at coming up with ideas, you won't change that on your own. But if you have an experience that shows you, yes, you have this capability, then you're more inclined to build on this and develop more creative thinking. And then it takes practice. It takes a whole culture of creativity, because creativity is a set of skills, of behaviors. And if we don't have a company that has the culture that goes with it, then we won't cultivate creativity in the workplace. And that's something where also HR and leadership is really asked to set the tone and set the framework so that creativity can develop. For example, one topic that's very much discussed these days is allowing to fail and how we deal with failure in a company, because creativity is always, it's finding the new path. So it always has to do with taking risks. And if we are afraid to take risks, if we are afraid to fail, then we don't want to go this path. So there's a whole infrastructure that needs to be created to allow for creativity in the workplace. And then also, like for everything else, we need accountability systems. If you say, yes, creativity is relevant for us, is something that makes sure we are still going to be a successful growing company in the next 3, 5, or 10 years. So then you have to make sure we build in the space to develop this quality and develop this skill so that we can cultivate our creative skills as individuals working at this company, but also as a collaborative creativity that is done by teams.
Something that I wanted to make sure that we include, because when people do say that to me, oh, you're so creative, I'm so not, you really have to make time to be creative, and that means failing, like you said, and trying new things. So it could be a soap making class, or maybe you're learning to paint, or next weekend, I'm going to be taking a class on audio editing and learning more about audio and production. Definitely important because I have a podcast, but it's not something that I do every day. But it's an area that I kind of want to learn and understand. And for me, that's all about taking risks and chances, which I feel like is an important component of creativity. What are some other ways maybe that individuals can get themselves out there and maybe test the waters at being creative?
I would always start with the things that interest you, that arise your curiosity. And often, if we go back into our early childhood, we everybody has been creative back then. So, what were the things that inspired your creativity back then? Was it drawing? Was it acting out scenes? Or was it singing songs? So look and see what is already there and try to cultivate that. And like, for example, one friend of mine, she said she always wanted to learn an instrument. She always wanted to play guitar. And now she is 35 and she takes her first guitar lessons. So if there is this kind of calling, that's always a great way to start, because we want to be doing something that we're motivated to do and that we find intriguing. If people have no idea where to start, then I think it's good to just do little samples. And Julia Cameron, who wrote the really famous book, The Artist's Way, she recommends going on artist dates and doing that regularly, like doing some activity that you normally wouldn't do and have time to do something artistic. So maybe 1 week you go to a museum, maybe one week you go to a painting workshop, another week you are doing a crochet lesson, whatever it is. So expose yourself to a lot of different areas of where you can be creative and see what sticks with you and what becomes your domain. So just doing these creative activities is always great, and also seeking novelty in everything that you do, like try out recipes that you have never done before, or take a different day to work. So visit a different country, listen to a podcast about a subject that you have never heard about. All these things, they really spark your creativity. And then if you want to get into a little bit more formal training of creativity, there are also strategies and methodologies, especially for the corporate world, that are really helpful. For example, how the creative problem solving process works, and so what stages you go through when you want to find a new solution to a problem that you have. And so there are really skills that you can learn in developing this creative ability.
Let's take a reset here. This is Jessica Miller Merrill, and you're listening to the Workology podcast. Today we're talking with Christiane Michaelis on fostering creativity in the workplace. You can connect with Christiane on Twitter at Dirty Easel. A special thank you to our sponsor, Clear Company.
This podcast is sponsored by Clear Company, the fastest growing talent management system on the market, and recently won G2 Crowd's #1 user recommended Winter 2018 award. Visit clearcompany.com to learn more.
Let's get back to the interview and dig deeper on creativity. Talk to us about your workshops and a little bit about that and some ways that you help folks foster their creativity.
Mm-hmm. So the workshops that I do with Dirty Easel, they are all art-based. And earlier I said creativity is not the same as art, but art has been a very proven old methodology to get us creative. So since we were cavemen, we started to do art, and art is something that's so ingrained in humans that I feel like this is a very good vehicle to transport the ideas of creativity. But the workshops that I do, they are not like a painting class where you learn some painting skills, so it's for the art's sake. The purpose of all these workshops is always a different one. And in my case, the painting is just the medium and the tool that I use to help people develop their creativity. So we have like 4 different domains that we do workshops on. One is building creative confidence. And that goes back to what you said earlier, like you're finding something where you can develop your own creativity and learn that you can be creative, even though you might have thought all your life that you're not. The second domain is collaborative creativity. And that's very different than just the individual creativity, because we in school and in our education, we often have not learned how to collaborate in a creative environment, which means like sharing ideas very in the early stages, being vulnerable, being open to ideas. And so there's a whole realm of concepts that go when you work together on creative problems in a group. So that's another focus area. And the third focus area of our workshops is cultivating the creative behaviors that form a culture of innovation. Like I said earlier, how do you learn to fail in the right way? And so we do workshops about that. Or what does it take to step outside of your comfort zone and get comfortable with doing that? Or how can you take risks that are not silly, but that drive you forward? So there are workshops all around those core traits of creativity. And the fourth area that we do workshops in is when we use visualization as a form of thinking. So very often our thought process is very driven through language, but not everybody is only verbally oriented. And so we have themes like, for example, find your mission or your vision, or find your personal branding. And we do that through painting exercises where we explore visually different options and ideas and let them evolve through the painting process. And all those workshops, they are for leadership training or talent development or employee engagement. So our workshops are tailored to all scenarios that play off in the corporate world.
So let's say that someone is committed to being more creative in their workplace and they're trying to sort of develop that creativity muscle. How does one make that stick? I feel like every good habit is through repetition, but what are some ways that you see or recommend to others to help sort of maintain those creative muscles?
Yes, creative muscle is built through having creativity become a habit, and so that has a lot to do with repetition, and it has a lot to do with setting the right culture, because when it's ingrained in the culture, you don't even have the option to be creative or not. It's just who we are, how we do things at our company. And if you look at companies that are really advanced in creativity, like Google or Facebook or Pixar, you can learn how the whole culture of this corporation is built around creativity. It starts with the spaces. It starts with the models, how meetings are held. It implies also the structures, the hierarchical structures of the company. It incorporates the way we give feedback in meetings. So though there's a lot to it, but once it becomes a culture, it is so ingrained that you don't have to be purposefully reaching out to be creative. It just becomes a way of doing things. But like as every other habit, you need to start by creating the awareness. Then you need to get in the repetition, and sometimes it helps to have outside facilitators who can navigate through the difficult areas where sometimes you have resistance, and I don't want to speak of something when I'm not yet finished with my idea, and I'm afraid somebody else might break that idea down early. So you need to make sure you're creating the safe environment where creativity can actually flourish. And then once you build those habits, then it starts to become a culture.
I love how you're making the connection between creativity and culture, because I do feel like it is something that we often maybe don't consider, we lose sight of. We try to make, hey, we're going to create this great culture, we're going to have these foosball tables, and we're going to have lunch catered in, but creativity lends itself to culture and is such a critical component in creating that great environment that just has that buzz that everyone wants to be a part of.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes we make the mistake to just do things that look cool and look fun, but don't invest so much in the way that we structure our interaction. And that's actually a huge part of the culture. And when we have ping pong tables, that's a sign that we want to encourage people to play, to get off their task, do something else, and that's something that is very creative. Like we have to listen to where we are at this moment, what it takes. Part of the creative process is, for example, stepping back from a moment and what we call the incubation period. And the ping pong is a great way to do that. And you might have noticed that many of the best ideas happen when we are in the shower. And when that is a place where we step aside from the problem. And so a company that offers these opportunities to step aside is actually helping to set an environment that's creative. Or if we have a lot of social gathering, that's also helping for creativity, because we can only be creative together. And creativity is a team sport when we trust one another, when we know that if we speak up something that we haven't fully processed yet, it's not something that people will make fun of or have a negative attitude about this. So creating opportunities to really get to know the people that you work with is fantastic to build this kind of trust that you need to take risks and step outside of the proven path.
I love what you said. Creativity is a team sport. This is so true, and it feeds off one another. Where can people go to learn more about you and what you do?
So I recommend starting off with the website. It's called thedirtyeasel.com. And on the website, you can also find a blog where I write regularly about everything that has to do with creativity, innovation, and how to create cohesive, innovative teams. So that's the best place to start with.
Well, this was a great conversation about fostering creativity in yourself, in the workplace, with your teams, and creating a culture of being able to do that. So thank you for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you, Jessica, for inviting me over and letting me talk about my passion project, creativity.
Are you an HR leader looking to upskill your HR game? Then check out Workology's Learn, an on-demand learning platform anytime, anywhere for individuals and teams. To learn more, visit workology.com/learn.
Creativity, like any habit, needs to be intentional. I do believe that creativity is present in every person, although it is easier for some to bring it out and foster creativity more than others. Creative ideas and innovation are critical for success in business. I hope that you encourage your leaders to foster creativity, whether it's part of a formal creative innovation initiative or an informal process. A special thank you to our podcast sponsor, Clear Company. Have a great day.